Welcome to the Rick Helps Real Estate Show, the traveling roadshow edition from the palatial estates of the Rick Helps Real Estate's RV. Still traveling. Got a little sunburned yesterday. You ever notice how people that live in Arizona don't have sunburns? They're not tanned. We don't go outside in that heat. I'm strolling around here yesterday and walking along the beach, and it's 80 degrees, and lo and behold, it's like, ow, you don't think about it. So there's a lot of sunburned people up here, and only because the sun's been out a few days. So it's been kind of cloudy and chilly by my bones, about 60 degrees, but why digress? I bumped into an article this morning, top of the morning, Keenan. Hope you're doing well. I bumped into an article this morning that mirrored my feelings on the marry the house, date the rate mantra. Those of you that follow me on here know I just haven't been a big fan of that, and I'll tell you why here in a minute. But it is an article by Yahoo News, and they're talking about how millennials are kind of being pushed out of the housing market by us old farts, and that they really don't want to be in a hurry to buy a house. Like this one gentleman here says, he says he feels completely lost in the home buying process. He's taking in all the advice pouring in from real estate professionals, friends, and colleagues, but was put off by one line making the rounds: marry the house, date the rate, meaning buy now, finance later. I could not agree more for a couple reasons. One, you have Keenan, congratulations. You sold your house. Way to go. Closing on my house 2 weeks from Wednesday. I don't like the fact that it just made the rounds so quickly. In other words, there was just somebody probably put it on social media. Well, marry the house and date the rate. You can always free finance later. So I don't like how it got grabbed by lenders, title companies, brokerages, and everybody just ran with it. It just reeked of simple bad advice. It's like, oh, I don't have to think. I'm just going to tell my clients marry the house, date the rate, because, well, that's what I'm hearing and that's what I'm seeing out there. And I just thought it was kind of disingenuous on the surface. I don't go to a lot of sales meetings anyway, so I don't know if that goes on. I don't know if somebody stands up and says, okay, here's what you tell your clients, but it sure seemed like that. And I just thought it was kind of bad. Now, having said that, I actually did that when I bought my first home in 1984. I had put my condo up for rent and bought a home, and it was back when, where rates were in 1984. They were higher than a kite. And the advice they told me was, well, rates are going to come down, so go ahead and, get in there now, and you can get an adjustable rate and it'll go down. And it did. But there was no access then. You couldn't look up 10-year treasuries. You couldn't get any advice. You couldn't look like how you're looking now. And that's, so I was kind of blind to it. And Jackie goes, I've heard that at sales meetings and it's ridiculous. So this date the rate thing on this article says, the date the rate mantra has bounced around real estate circles since last spring when the Federal Reserve was well into its most aggressive rate hike. Here's from a real estate agent in Portland. The line was meant to give comfort to home buyers that this may not last forever, said Ann Stewart, a real estate agent in Portland. Yet in August 22, she posted a TikTok pushing against the advice. The phrase was being abused. That was my problem, she told the Post, because it didn't really give a big enough picture for people to understand the complexities of the housing market. In other words, you just don't know. I mean, you could look at the historical average for interest rates and you could say, okay, here's where we've been. Remember, I said I bought my house in 84. Let's see, it was right. 83, 84, they started going back up again. July 6th, that's about close. I think that's about when I closed. And now I got lucky. They went down to 9.1%. So I wrote it out for about a year, and then I refinanced, and I got lucky. This was a little bit easier to predict only because inflation was really high, and they had really clamped down on the economy. So you just had this feeling that this wasn't going to last forever. But we're just at the beginnings of this. the clamping down by the central bank and trying to squeeze some liquidity out of the marketplace. So we don't really know where this chart, I'll make it a little short term here, where it's going to go. And this is the 30-year fixed mortgage rate, and it ties pretty close to inflation. So we don't know for sure that it's going to turn down. And when you're buying something on a 30-year mortgage and you don't know for sure, it's not easy to feel comfortable with that. Now, having said that, there are some adjustable rate mortgages that aren't too bad of a product that say, well, you have to qualify for this amount. Let's say the highest amount that it can reset, but your rate's going to come in like a 2-1 buy down. And you can get that and say, okay, well, if it does pop up, I can still afford that. That's great. And if I can get the seller to help contribute to that rate buy down, that's even better. I'm not opposed to that product because I think it has a cap. I'm just not comfortable with saying, well, I'll go ahead and lock in now because I know for sure I'm going to be able to refinance later. Well, you don't know for sure that you're going to be able to refinance later. And that's where most people get bit. And, and the rates right now are tied to the CPI, consumer price index. And here it is here, core inflation is coming down. That's good. So perhaps rates will come down, but core inflation has to stay there. It's got to come down to stay there. And as we've seen back in the 80s, it went down and went up, went down. So could happen again. It's also kind of correlates with oil prices. So oil prices started to spike up. Interest rates went up to 7.19 over there. And then you can see here the 10-year treasury that was kind of sitting here on what Pat likes to call the channel. It was kind of flat. Well, we've broken out now. We're going the other way. And then we had bank failures here that pushed rates down. And now that the wind is kind of out of those sails and you're not hearing a lot about bank failures, there might be more. We don't know. Rates started getting comfortable back up in their zone of raising again. And Jackie goes on to say, at least we're not seeing stupid loans like 2005. Yeah, we're not getting anywhere close to that. So the other thing that I see as well is kind of where we are in the market, in the Phoenix market. And this is a bit of an eye chart, but let me just go over a few things. Our active listings are higher than what they were going back to 2 years ago, but not by much. Shows here by about 3,000 homes. But the pending listings are what's really down. If you look at 2 years ago, we had pending listings of 7,700, and today they're 4,900. So the market is really, really slow in Arizona. Sales per year, 73,000 versus 2 years ago, 113,000 in 2021. Things were pretty brisk. The average days on market, it shows 84. Now, this number is always a little bit deceiving when it days on market because it counts the day that your home is listed and then the day it closes. So if somebody says, well, I want to buy your house, but I don't want to close for 45 days, and it took 30 days for you to find that buyer, now you're considered 75 days on market instead of 30 days. So there's things like days on market and agent days on market. So statistically, they tend to track it from the time your home is listed till the time it closes. So it doesn't mean it's going to take you 85 days to sell your house. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. The monthly average sales per square foot is actually slightly higher than last year, sitting here at $285. The appreciation rate and monthly minus 0.07. And the average sale price percent of list is kind of hanging in there at 97.97% versus the silly season where the average sales price was 101%. People were bidding up like crazy. So the Cromford Market Index that we follow is sitting here at 160. And in 2021, this is where we were on average, folks, 353. I mean, that tells you how lopsided the market was in 2021, clearly in favor of buyers. The one thing that bugs me and that is kind of like and it should bug everybody, is the level of debt that we have in this country that's going to put a squeeze on credit. And it's kind of hanging out there in the balance. And that's going to be a headwind for lowering interest rates. Did you know that with the uptick in interest rates, it's kind of like an adjustable rate credit card that you have? So you're paying interest only on your credit card and none of it's going towards the balance. Our interest only now on our government debt is as high as national defense. I think it's $87 billion. That's a shocking number, folks. And that is one of the impacts of the central bank raising rates is, the cost of borrowing has gone up. I don't know if you remember when Janet Yellen was yelling off the rooftops back before when rates were really low, telling Congress, you should borrow, the money's free. Well, that money resets if you're running a deficit, and we're running a huge deficit. And you can see here that it says right here, we're at 120% of gross domestic product. Now, back in the 80s when I was talking, and we had really high rates to squash inflation, we still only had as a percentage of GDP back in 84, 38%. So we didn't have the level of debt. And back then I remember people were really beating up the president going, hey, he's lowered taxes. Now we're running deficits. We're going to have all this debt. We're at 48%. We reached a peak here after 2020 of 126%, 134% actually. So a little frightening, something to keep an eye on, something to complain about when you see your leaders, because the other dangerous thing is it's hard to unwind from that. If we were really to pull back on our spending, we're a consumer driven economy. It'll really put a nail in the coffin to our economy. So that's where we are. And I only bring that up because that puts pressure on interest rates. It squeezes the availability of money. And so that makes it a little bit harder for rates to come down. On the flip side, it makes it a little more justifiable for the central bank to say, well, we're going to pull rates back a little bit because it'll help on those adjustable rate payments that we're making on the federal debt. So it's a complicated business out there. That's why marry the house, date the rate is not that easy of a thing to grab onto. There are too many moving parts when it comes to financing and determining the rate on your mortgage. Now, shifting locally here, this is interesting here. You've heard about this new, all this land that they sold out by Apache Junction that the state sold that is meant for development. And there's 11,000 homes coming out to Apache Junction in a place called Superstition Vistas. So the first thing that came to my mind was, do they have water? And the Apache Junction Water Utilities Community Facilities District is the designated water provider for the Superstition Vistas Master Plan community. Projects of this scale are required by state law to have 100 years of water for every home in the community. The city has enough water for the build out for 4 square miles in a new community, which will house up to 11,000 homes in approximately the next 10 years. This isn't going up really quick. The development's water will be provided through pumped groundwater, which is retained surface water, currently unused by the city. The development's water will be provided through, in addition, a large amount of water will be brought in through the city's Superstition Area Water Treatment Plant with multiple water campuses built to provide potable water to the Superstition Valleys community. So when you hear that we've stopped building in the state of Arizona because of water, that is simply not true. New developments have to show that they have a source for the water, and they've done that out here. And they did go on to say that it's well known that Arizona is struggling in this time of drought, but efforts are continuing for water conservation in East Valley and beyond. However, it's as though the residents of Apache Junction have already taken that message to heart. Their citizens use less than 100 gallons of water per day, among the lowest usage of any city in the Phoenix metropolitan area. There is an assured water supply for 100 gallons for each person per day for all of our developments in the city. Well, at first glance, you go out to Apache Junction, you don't see any lawns. You see swimming pools. You don't see perhaps as many, but that's pretty much desert living out there. You don't see a lot of lawns. You don't see a lot of um, planned communities with green belts. So they're not using as much water as you see, like if you get in Chandler, get down to Ocotillo, where everybody's got lawns, where there's green belts everywhere. So there's um, maybe they didn't plan it that way, but that's the way it's shaken out. They're not using as much water as, excuse me, a lot of areas in the valley. So that's just one of the areas where they're going to be developing all these homes out there. And I've been kind of looking at it saying, well, when you put homes where there were farms, they use less water because farms use a lot of water. But out in that area, there aren't any farms. So I've been really curious to read and find an article like that that says, well, they are finding water. They have spoken up and got up. That's just one development. I don't know if the rest of them are going to be that easy, if they're going to be able to find the water out there, but that's the first one that's coming. They're going to take 10 years to build it. So you're not going to see 11,000 homes spring up overnight. So that's the big development. Most of the building that we're seeing is in Queen Creek, up in Buckeye, and out in the West Valley. So this one's going to be quite interesting to watch. So everybody have a fabulous Monday. Take on the day and have a great week. Take care.